Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Goldie Show. I'm Goldie Gamari, of course, and I want to welcome you all. If you're watching on X and you want to join the conversation, feel free to switch over to YouTube. The link to my YouTube channel is posted in a comment to this live stream on X. So if you want to be involved, would love to see you there. Um, so before we begin, of course, a shout out to the mods and of course all the members here. Thank you for being here and supporting. So today is Cyrus the Great Day, and I've mentioned this before. We've spoken about it a lot. Cyrus the Great is the founder of the Persian Empire. He's basically the most famous and well-known king in the history of human civilization, and Iranians like to celebrate Cyrus the Great Day by going to his tomb. In 1971, the Shah of Iran at the time, Shahanshah Aryamir, he actually held a 2,500-year celebration in honor of the founding of the Persian Empire and Cyrus the Great at Persepolis. And the Islamists and communists accused the Shah of holding an expensive party, basically downplaying the importance not only of celebrating the fact that Iran had turned 2,500 years old, but also downplaying the fact that this wasn't some sort of private party. This was an investment in heritage, tourism, and culture. And what the Shah did by celebrating the founding of the Persian Empire in 1971, he actually put Iran on the map, and he brought hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment, travel, and tourism to the country. But it's not just about attacking what the Shah did in 1971. Um, it's about what the Islamists are continuing to do today. So, again, Iran is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship that is anti Iranian. The Islamic dictatorship is constantly trying to erase Iranian identity and history, right? Like they just want Iran to only be Islamic and nothing else, right? They don't like the fact that our Iranian identity and culture and heritage and history goes back thousands of years before Islam was invented. And so not only have they been continuing to spread these lies and propaganda about what the Shah of Iran did in 1971, they're continuing to this very day to try and discourage Iranians from visiting historical sites in Iran. One thing that Iranians like to do on Cyrus the Great Day is to visit the tomb of Cyrus the Great. The tomb is actually the site of where the Shah had his 2,500-year celebration in the desert, right? They never mentioned that it was at the tomb of Cyrus the Great. They never mentioned that it was, in front of the ruins of Persepolis, which was the capital of the Persian Empire. The Islamists never mentioned that, right? They just spin the facts, they spin the narrative because that's what they are. They're a bunch of liars and jihadists, right? So even to this day, the Islamic Republic is so threatened by a king who lived 2,500 years ago that they have blocked access to the tomb of Cyrus the Great. Again, for non-Iranians, I want you to understand that when we Iranians talk about how oppressive and brutal and insane this dictatorship is, this is what we're talking about. This Islamic dictatorship has literally blocked access to the tomb of Cyrus the Great to prevent Iranians from going there to acknowledge their heritage and celebrate their heritage. Do you understand the amount of repression? Do you understand the extent of cultural genocide that the Islamic Republic has attempted in the last 47 years, where they are literally trying to erase our Iranian identity? For those of you who are living in, normal democratic Western countries, United States, Canada, and Europe, can you even imagine your government doing that to you? Like, imagine you want to go to I don't know, a museum, and the government blocks you from going because the museum is anti-Islamic. That's literally what's happening in Iran on a daily basis. And so here is footage that was sent today by Iranians in occupied Iran to people outside of the country, because the only way that those of us who are outside of the country can get reliable news about what's happening in occupied Iran is through these videos. We can't trust the media outlets in occupied Iran because everything is controlled by the Islamic Republic, right? Everything is the propaganda mouthpiece outlet for the dictatorship. It's literally an Orwellian Big Brother dystopia type scenario. So this is literally how we get news and updates about what's happening in occupied Iran, is from people in there who secretly film, and then they send it over to us so that we can then share it with you guys. So here's the footage of the Islamic Republic literally blocking Iranians from going to visit a historical tomb, because that is how threatened the Islamic Republic is by Iranians and by the Iranian identity. And remember, when they took over the country in 1979, they said, we don't want patriots, we want Muslims. Patriots are useless to us. And this right here is a prime example of what they meant when they said, we don't want patriots, we want Muslims. Watch this.
این همه را از خوزستان کوبیدیم اومدیم اینجا کلاً.
So he's saying we've driven all this way from Khuzestan province to here. This is close to Shiraz.
مسیر رو بستن
And they've closed the road.
و اینم مجموعه میراث جهانی پاسارگاد مقبره.
So that was, he was showing the sign, the exit sign to go towards Persepolis, the tomb of Cyrus the Great. And he's basically saying they've blocked off the road. No one can get off the highway to go to Persepolis, basically.
کوروش بزرگ هستش که امروز هم 7 آبان 1404 که اجازه ورود نداریم، مسیر رو بس.
And then he said today's date, right? Because what if a lot of Islamists or propagandists will claim that the video is like an older video from another time. So Iranians, when they're sending these sorts of reports out to talk about what the Islamic Republic is doing, they'll always add the date. So he just added today's date, right? The day, month, and year.
برای روز کوروش بزرگ.
So Kurosh Bozorg is Cyrus the Great, right? Kurosh is Cyrus and Bozorg is great. So he's saying on the day of Cyrus the Great, you know, they've blocked the roads.
نیروی انتظامی و بسیج و سپاه مسیر ورودی مسیر شهر پارسه رو بستن.
Wow. So he's saying that on the day of Cyrus the Great, which is today, again, Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Okay, so the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Basij are an Islamic paramilitary force that are responsible for beating and suppressing Iranians. He says that these Islamic terror groups have blocked the road, preventing people from going to visit the tomb of Cyrus the Great on Cyrus the Great Day.
ورود به هیچ کس نمیدن، میگن دور بزنید. ببینید.
این همه را از خوزستان کوبیدیم اومدیم اینجا.
There you go. So another reason why I like to remind people to make a difference between Iran and the Islamic Republic, because I'm Iranian, this is a flag of Iran. The people in this video who are trying to visit the tomb of Cyrus the Great are Iranian, but they're being occupied by an Islamic dictatorship that is trying to murder them, basically. Oh, Unusual AI, thank you so much for the messages. Javid Shah, I'm Yusrael Chai. Cyrus Accords, Goldie, thank you. Thank you so much. And another message again. Thank you so much, Unusual AI, for the support. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, so let's now get back to the video that I wanted to share. And that's why this is so critical, okay? So this is why regime change is closer than ever, because, you know, after 47 years, Iranians are pretty much fed up with the terrorist Islamic Republic. Now, there have been a lot of recent developments with respect to overthrowing the Islamic Republic. But before we get to those recent developments, I want to continue playing this interview with His Royal Highness King Reza Pahlavi this is from last year. I played the first half of this interview in my live stream last week. The link to that is in the description below. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure you watch part 1 as well. And the reason I want to play this is because he actually answers a lot of the questions and concerns that non-Iranians have when it comes to regime change, right? He responds to, you know, those isolationists who say, we don't want war, we don't want boots on the ground, we don't want World War III. He responds to the false narrative that's been put out by the Islamic Republic that basically says, oh, you know, like Iran will go into civil war and chaos and all that nonsense, right? Because a lot of people who are not familiar with the Middle East will equate Iran with, you know, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and it's you know, Syria, and that's just simply not the case. Iran is a completely different entity. We're a completely different like nation. We're Iranians, first of all. We're not Arabs, so right there's sort of a whole different level of dynamics, right? Like there's really no tribalism in Iran the way there are in like a lot of Arab countries. We're all Iranian first, right? So that like tribalism doesn't really exist in Iran as much. And of course, our nation, you know, our identity as Iranians has existed for thousands and thousands of years, right? So let's now go back, and I want to play this part because this is such an important question, and he answers it perfectly. So pay attention to this part.
That many of us Americans are tired of.
Right. Sorry. And before I start, if you are enjoying, please make sure you like and subscribe. And of course, if you want to support my channel, memberships are open as well. And there are a few perks, extra perks with memberships.
To in fact reward this regime by giving.
Are tired of wars. We.
To in fact reward this regime by giving them more means that they shouldn't have had in the first place. And that's the question that many Iranians ask. It says, you're not punishing the regime, you're in fact emboldening them by giving them more means to carry out their, sinister goals.
You bring up the point that many of us Americans are tired of wars. We are also financially in distress. Right now, our borders are porous. We have many problems here in America. And the idea of having to get involved in wars across the globe seems overwhelming as an understatement. And we're not sure if that's really our priority, because our priority has to be to take care of our own right now. And I'm curious, what is your answer to the possibility that we don't engage? What would happen if, you know, we build a border here, we secure our country, we focus on America, and we let the Middle East deal with the Middle East? What would that look like?
Okay. First, I would say that America might say, well, we want to leave them alone. They won't leave you alone. That's the first thing. They're still coming.
So that's really important, guys, okay? Especially for non-Iranians, right? You know, Americans, who else? And you guys are saying, we're tired of war, you know, just leave them alone. Okay, that's fine, but they don't leave you alone. They're not leaving you alone. They haven't left you alone, right? Look at what's happening in the streets of America right now. When they burn the flag and yell Allahu Akbar, when, you know, like look at Dearborn, Michigan, right? Do you think that's leaving you alone? Or, you know, look at all the terrorism that's happening all over. Even if you guys want peace, the reality is that the Islamic Republic does not want peace. The Islamic Republic wants war and jihad. And they actually declared war against the United States of America in 1979, not only when they took over Iran and occupied Iran, But then there was the American hostage crisis, right? They took American hostages, held them and tortured them for 444 days. How soon people forget. How soon people forget. So just because you guys might want peace, that's fine, but you have to wake up to the reality that the Islamic Republic does not want peace with you. The Islamic Republic wants to destabilize your society and take over. That's their global agenda. And you know, Amir, absolutely. Look at what's happening in Nigeria. I spoke about the Nigerian genocide last week, and actually tomorrow's episode, I'm bringing Zari back, and he's going to give us an update on the Nigerian genocide, right? The mass murder of Christians by Islamists. And that's linked to the Middle East. That's linked to these Islamic terrorist groups like the Islamic Republic and the Muslim Brotherhood and all those proxies as well. So let me just replay this because this is critical. He says you might want peace, but they don't want peace with you. So whether or not you want to go to war, you have no choice. They've already brought the war to you.
We're not sure if that's really our priority, because our priority has to be to take care of our own right now. And I'm curious, what is your answer to the possibility that we don't engage? What would happen if, we build a border here, we secure our country, we focus on America, and we let the Middle East deal with the Middle East? What would that look like?
Okay. First, I would say that America might say, well, we want to leave them alone. They won't leave you alone. That's the first thing. They're still coming after you.
How?
So by knowing that the biggest success that they can have is to pretty much defeat what they always said from get-go, the great Satan, America, which is why they have always had such a hostile, antagonistic, as an ideological system against the West, represented chiefly by America. But I understand. I'm a taxpayer here. I don't want my money to end up being spent on wasted resources either. But you should not assume that the issue in Iran has to be a war. And let me explain you why.
This is the important part, right? So this is where a lot of people get it wrong. This is where a lot of the isolationists get it wrong. They automatically assume that the only way to deal with the Islamic Republic in Iran is going to war and boots on the ground. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. In fact, the vast majority of Iranians don't want war, okay? And even His Royal Highness, King Reza Pahlavi, who's the leader of the official opposition, and he's basically leading the charge to overthrow the Islamic Republic and free Iran. He's always said from the beginning, we don't want war, we don't want boots on the ground, and stop assuming that the only way to overthrow the Islamic Republic is through war. I mean, look at 1979. 1979, when the Islamic Republic occupied Iran, there was no war. It didn't happen because of a war. So why are people automatically assuming that the only way this is going to happen is a war? I'll tell you why. That's also part of the Islamist propaganda, right? They want to scare Americans into thinking that the only solution is war. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. In fact, war would not even be helpful. And no one is calling for war. I'm not calling for war. King Reza Pahlavi is not calling for war. No Iranians are calling for war. But it's the propagandists who are using this World War III narrative to scare people into thinking that there's going to be a war. And it's the farthest thing from the truth. So pay attention to this part.
Because the dynamics of change in Iran is a matter of what is the agent for change in Iran? What is the element that can bring down the system? It's no other than the Iranian people themselves. It's your natural army on the ground already, except for they are fighting the fight with no support whatsoever.
Right? So he's basically saying, you already have an army. You already have boots on the ground in Iran. It's the Iranian people. It's the people who are trying desperately to overthrow the Islamic regime. It's the people like the one in the video I just sent you, where, they're trying to honor their Iranian heritage and they're being stopped by the Islamic Republic. Roads are blocked, people are out with guns, preventing them from going to see the tomb of a king who died 2,500 years ago, because that's how much the Islamic Republic is scared of Iranians, right? The Islamic Republic knows that Iranians hate them. The only reason the Islamic Republic is still in power is because of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's a paramilitary terrorist group that was created in 1979 for the sole purpose of protecting the Islamic Republic and murdering Iranians when they try to rise up. So when people ask, why haven't Iranians taken over? It's because there's literally an Islamic army that was created in 1979 to murder Iranians when they try to rise up, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. But the missing element here, right, like what a lot of non-Iranians don't realize or understand, is that you don't need to bring in external forces. You already have an ally. The ally is the Iranian people. And if you watched my live stream from yesterday, USA versus Iran, I go through step by step and I show you exactly what Iranians think of the United States and other people. But the Islamic Republic doesn't want you to think that Iranians are peaceful and Iranians are your allies. They want you to think that Iranians don't like you, because that's how the Islamic Republic remains in power, right? That's how they remain in power, by keeping Iranians hostage.
You won't need to engage America in any kind of conflict. In fact, I would be opposed in principle in any kind of foreign intervention. But I do believe that if you bring in the necessary element of pressure on the regime, equaling the playing field for Iranians, you don't have to do anything much more than that, because the rest will be done by the people themselves. But we need to have a major shift in policy that has yet to exist in the Western world, because they're still in the mindset of cutting a deal and compromise and expecting behavior change, which was a flawed expectation to begin with. And
so this is really important, because I'm going to talk about this on Friday, right? So the Shah of Iran is saying, one of the biggest mistakes in Western policy is thinking that you can make a deal with these people and there will be peace, and it never works. And look, literally what happened, like what's happening right now in the Middle East. The ceasefire is pretty much over, and Hamas terrorists broke the ceasefire, attacked Israel, attacked the IDF, and of course Israel is now responding, as it has every right to do so. But President Trump was boasting and bragging about peace in the Middle East. And I actually did a couple of live streams on that. And I predicted, I was like, this isn't going to last. I don't think this is going to last like 30 days. And it hasn't even been a month. And Israel is already having to defend itself against Hamas terrorists, right? And because that's one of the major policy mistakes of the West, is the lobby groups for these Islamic terrorist organizations, lobby groups like NIAC, National Iranian American Council, who basically is a mouthpiece for the Islamic Republic, and other terrorist lobby groups, have convinced Western politicians that they can negotiate and reason with Islamic terrorists. But you can't. And he's saying this last year. I mean, he said it before, but even last year he said that's one of the biggest policy mistakes that Western politicians make, is thinking they can cut a deal with terrorists. Terrorists are not rational actors, guys. You cannot trust them. You cannot make deals with them, because they don't believe in that. All they believe is in Sharia law and jihad. So they will lie. They will do what they have to do in order to recuperate and gain strength. And then as soon as they get strong enough, they'll attack again. That's exactly what Hamas just did. And that's exactly what he's saying here. So pay attention, guys. This part's important. He says it's a Western foreign policy mistake the West constantly makes.
it's no other than the Iranian people themselves. It's your natural army on the ground already, except for they are fighting the fight with no support whatsoever. You won't need to engage America in any kind of conflict. In fact, I would be opposed in principle in any kind of foreign intervention. But I do believe that if you bring in the necessary element of pressure on the regime, equaling the playing field for Iranians, you don't have to do anything much more than that because the rest will be done by the people themselves. But we need to have a major shift in policy that has yet to exist in the Western world because they're still in the mindset of cutting a deal and compromise and expecting behavior change, which was a flawed expectation to begin with and simply proves there's a great deal of naivete in understanding that the DNA of this regime is one that it cannot be compatible and coexisting in the world as we know it. Because in their view, it's either you or them. There's no gray area. Therefore, what it is that, let's say, America could do
Yes.
to make a difference. Not just America, but America chiefly because, when America...
So listen to this part here, okay? So now he's giving like something tangible, right? But you never hear this in the mainstream media. You never hear this side of the narrative. You never hear the actual voice and wants of the Iranian people in mainstream media. All you hear from are like the lefties, the communists, and the mouthpieces for the Islamic Republic who push that war narrative in order to scare Americans. But pay attention to this because now he's actually giving a tangible solution as to how Americans can support the Iranian people in overthrowing the brutal Islamic dictatorship. That is also a threat to America, by the way, right? It's the same enemy.
America leads, others probably follow. And the sense that I have always suggested a two-pronged approach, a parallel approach. One is a campaign of maximum pressure on the regime. That means in the form of sanctions, in forms of, example, putting the IRGC, which America has done that already. Your allies in Europe have yet to do that. But that simply means you're bringing more way of curtailing the regime's ability to have access in resources or do anything that they do regionally by the proxies or back home. Parallel to that, you have to have a component of maximum support. Let me give you two tacit examples. One of the key issues for those of us trying to coordinate efforts in terms of organizing whatever we need to organize against the regime is communication, which is vital. Access to the internet, free flow of information. And these are the kind of things that will facilitate Iranians not to be detached.
Access to internet is so important, guys. Every single time things get heated up inside of occupied Iran, the Islamic Republic will cut off internet access. In fact, this is how evil and demonic the Islamic Republic is. During the 12-day war between Israel and the Islamic Republic, the IDF was, sending messages to Iranians through, internet and, Telegram or whatever, giving them advance notice of places that the IDF was going to bomb, like IRGC bases that they were going to attack, giving Iranians advance notice so Iranians could evacuate. So you know what the Islamic Republic did? They shut off the internet. They shut down communications so that Iranians would not get these advance warnings from the IDF. They prevented Iranians from calling outside of Iran, right? So those of us who are outside were barely getting any news from people inside of Iran. And even Iranians within the country were having difficulty calling each other. Like, I don't know, like, to me, like, I have to look into this, but that's pretty much like a war crime. That's a war crime. Can you imagine? Imagine you're in Iran, okay, and you're getting information and you're trying to communicate, and then all of a sudden, the Islamic dictatorship shuts down the internet, shuts down communication because they want you to die, right? The Islamic Republic shut down communications and shut down the internet because they wanted mass casualties in Iran, because they wanted to use Iranians as human shields. Now, thankfully, Iranians were very smart, very ingenuitive, and they were able to kind of circumvent and counter. Some people were, using paid VPNs. Some people did actually smuggle in some Starlinks. So in certain areas, there was internet, but not everywhere. Not everywhere. And thankfully, Iranians survived. But this is why Iranians support Israel, and this is why Iranians hate the Islamic Republic, because even during the 12-day war, right, Israel made incredibly sure to, to not harm any civilians and to only attack military bases. And they also gave Iranians advance notice to evacuate. And yet the Islamic Republic was trying to keep Iranians where they were so that they could use them as human shields and martyrs, right? Exactly what happens in Gaza with Hamas, right? So where do you think Hamas learns these tactics of human shields? It's from the Islamic Republic, because Hamas is the evil little brother of the Islamic Republic. So that's why access to internet is so important. And that's why the Islamic Republic not only bans access to internet whenever they can, but they've also made it illegal for Iranians to go on social media and talk about what happens in Iran or talk negatively about the Islamic Republic. And doing so is a crime punishable by death. That's why a lot of Iranians on social media will never use their real face or their real name, because doing so is putting their lives at risk. And many Iranians have been arrested and executed for the crime of speaking out on social media.
From the world and be disconnected from the world, which is something the regime is attempting to do all the time. And parallel to that, maybe find ways of giving financial means and support to encourage and assist in the case of labor strikes, which I think is the quickest way to paralyze the regime from within, by finding a way to fund it without a penny of American or others' tax dollars be spent on. How? There are many frozen assets, which is the Iranian people's money in the first place, that can be repurposed or allocated to support such campaigns of civil disobedience. All of this will contribute to a complete, leverage issue. But it's also important because when people see light at the end of the tunnel, when they see that there's actual solidarity, this time with them, finally, after 4 decades, when they see that this time the world is serious about telling the people of Iran, we had enough with this regime, we had given them ample opportunities to come clean, and they haven't. Meanwhile, the conflict is escalating, and this may become pretty soon an unavoidable conflict. The only solution that remains is put an end to this regime, but by helping the Iranian people bringing it down. But that requires some support. Many of these campaigns in other countries did not succeed without tacit support from the free world. The same case applies to Iran. And
that's so true. No revolution has or regime change has ever been successful without outside support. Even the American Revolution was successful because they had the support of France at the time, right?
In that sense, you don't have to engage your troops. You don't have to spend your own money, but you can find ways of actually helping those campaigns within Iran to finally have a chance to be successful. It also facilitates the transition post-regime. Because I know that some of the concern is, are we going to have a scenario of chaos? Is it going to be a vacuum that is not filled? Are we going to have some situation of...
So again, guys, this part's important because now he's talking about some of the propaganda that goes out where people say, oh, what's going to come is going to be even worse. We don't want another Afghanistan or, whatever nonsense, right? So pay attention to this part.
Anarchy and instability. Well, what I'm suggesting is that this strategy includes a controlled implosion with a plan for transition post-regime into the next phase and has its component. And it also includes maximum defections from the regime, because unlike what happened post-Saddam Hussein in Iraq and de-Baathification, which was disastrous in terms of consequence, this time we're not saying that everybody on the job has to disappear. So long as their hand is not soiled in Iranian people's blood, they can survive regime change and they can have a place and a role to play in the future. So you're talking about a national reconciliation based on amnesty and not revenge, not on retribution, while justice can still exist for people who have to seek that, but in the spirit of more of a sort of what happened in the case of South Africa, truth and reconciliation, those kind of approaches, which means that this is the path of least resistance for those who can now join us, who are disillusioned, former reformists, who know that now we have to go beyond this regime, which is the collective ask of Iran. And in
just wanted to respond here. So, Yoav says, Goldie, you don't have fighter pilots, Navy captains, tank drivers, drone operators, which is a crime none is supplying you with. They smoked Gaddafi for less with a coalition of like 6 armies. So it's, the Iranian people don't have any weapons or anything like that. That's true. But one of the things that he mentioned here, okay, is he spoke about mass defections from within, right? So defections from the army and defections from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps itself. Now, this right here, this is an interview from last year. The reason I'm playing it is because I'm laying the groundwork for the updates that I'm going to provide. And part of that update and part of the plan to overthrow the Islamic Republic includes mass defections. And we have confirmation of an incredibly high number of mass defections. And so I don't want to get into that too much because this is, I still want to go through this, but pay attention to what he's saying here, because everything that King Reza Pahlavi said last year during this interview is now literally coming to pass or has already come to pass. So again, like this, the plan for regime change is not something that is happening overnight. This is something that has been years in the making. And I have a lot of very, very exciting updates for you, which I will talk about either Friday or possibly next week. But no, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
that sense, the world is lagging behind. Iranians today have come to the conclusion that as much as they try to reform this regime, it cannot happen, and are fed up with it. And they want to move beyond that. And that's where you have to connect the dots and see, as a matter of foreign policy, as a Western democracy, with the values that we all cherish, which is the same thing the Iranian people want, why are we wasting time trying to reason with a regime that in its entire comportment is the most alien to these values? And we as Iranians, and me having lived in this country for almost 4 decades, and appreciate everything that is incorporated in your system of justice and separation of powers and the guarantees that exist and the institutions and the role of media and this and that. And we would like to be able to do the same thing for ourselves in Iran. We are natural partners in this. And I'm just conveying to you a message on behalf of millions of my compatriots to say, if not now, when? How many more generations have to be sacrificed? How much more do we have to endure? And Americans should not think that by not us doing something, we won't be engaged. You'll be dragged into it whether you liked it or not. It will still impact you economically because the regime continues to, for instance, by supporting the Houthis, certainly disrupting maritime traffic. Certainly it has an impact on oil prices and what have you. So it's not like...
I mean, that's a really important point. And, a lot of people don't see the connections here, right? Those who are not familiar with the Middle East and the relationship between the Islamic terrorist groups, right? The existence of the Islamic Republic in and of itself is a huge negative financial impact on the American economy because of what the Houthis do with respect to maritime trade. And the Houthis are funded and supported by the Islamic Republic, right? So it's all linked back. It's all linked back to the Islamic Republic, whether you know it or not.
America can all of a sudden go into some sort of a introverted mode that we are disconnecting from everything else and then we'll be fine. That's not going to be the reality of things. But if you want to minimize the cost for yourself in terms of your national security interests, in terms of your economic interests, I'll go beyond about what it is that you're missing. Imagine the potential that would be good for American entities and business if tomorrow Iran opens its door and says, we are open for business, come and invest and help us rebuild our country. And it's a win-win situation. So we need to start thinking what a different Iran could provide in terms of our interests, rather than, well, we don't want to be dragged into conflict anymore, because that means that nobody thinks beyond the status quo. And we should start talking about beyond the status quo.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, and that is, even if we don't want to engage with Iran, and Iran is already engaged with us. And I think we've seen, especially lately, that they have been very much embedded into our institutions here in the United States, certainly in the West, very much so in Europe. So we've seen what they've been doing on college campuses.
So she makes a really good point, right? Like, part of the reason you have all of these, Western university students who are out there supporting Islamic terrorism is because the Islamic Republic has infiltrated institutions like universities and media and other places, and they're promoting and pushing their own jihadi narrative, because it doesn't make sense for anyone to think that Islamic terrorists who yell Allahu Akbar while they chop people's heads off are resistance fighters, right? And yet today, right now in the West, we are seeing an alarming number of young people who actually think that terrorists are freedom fighters. And that's not by accident, guys. That's not by random. This is something that has been planned and they have been working on for quite a long time, right? Like it's basically like civilizational jihad. So again, when he says that just because you don't want anything to do with the Middle East, that doesn't mean that they're going to leave you alone. They're going to come after you no matter what. So you're going to have to deal with it, whether you like it or not. And one of the ways that they're coming after the West is through the educational institutions and through the indoctrination of, people in the United States.
Just the other day, there was an intelligence leak about, the Israeli potential attack came out of the United States. How embedded do you think Iran is already in American institutions where we need to be concerned and maybe even on alert?
Well, I think the footprint is becoming more and more vivid. They are committed to that. They know what the weaknesses are in this country, and they're taking full advantage of it. You're not dealing with a dumb enemy.
What are the weaknesses that you think they're taking advantage of?
I think the fact that it's a little bit of a naive thought that they will not try to influence through their lobbies, what happens. You brought it up yourself. It's not only that, there are many other things as well, but they're at work. They're not only doing work regionally. They try to go as far as they can, to Latin America even, and many places, as you mentioned, in Europe. So everything to try to have a role that influences maybe the wrong way in public opinion. Khamenei had multiple offices in Europe through which they fund so-called organization for this and that, but in reality, they're doing the regime's bidding in antagonizing.
Guys, so he makes a very good point here. Do you remember that Islamic Cultural Center in Hamburg was shut down? I think it was in Hamburg. There was two. There was two in Germany. Let me pull it up here. Here we go. So here, when he just talks about how the Islamic Republic is operating in Western countries through various cultural institutions, he's literally referring to like Islamic cultural centers, right? Now, again, I'm making a distinction because I'm not referring to all Islamic cultural centers, but I'm referring to those that are funded by the Islamic Republic. Those Islamic cultural centers and mosques and schools and whatever that are funded by the Islamic Republic are actually a front for terrorism and jihad and indoctrination. And one of the most recent examples is here. Let me bring this up. This was last year, actually. So this is what he's referring to, guys. So this was in Germany, and this was on July 25, 2024. So Berlin shut down the Islamic Center Hamburg due to its ties with Iran and Hezbollah and its promotion of radical Islamism. So again, Hezbollah is a terrorist proxy group. It's located in southern Lebanon. It is 100% funded by the Islamic Republic. Okay, so here you have, this place, right? I mean, it looks like a, Islamic whatever mosque or whatever, and it's called the Islamic Center of Hamburg, but it's shut down because it was connected to the Islamic Republic in Iran and Hezbollah, right? And it was shut down because it was promoting radical Islamism, the German Interior Ministry said on July 24. Acting on a court order, German authorities have begun searching 53 of the Islamic Center Hamburg's properties in 8 federal states, the ministry said. Here's the thing. The Islamic Center of Hamburg promotes an Islamist extremist totalitarian ideology in Germany. Let me repeat that, guys. The Islamic Center Hamburg promotes an Islamist extremist totalitarian ideology in Germany. It supports the terrorists of Hezbollah, and it spreads aggressive anti-Semitism, said Interior Minister Nancy Faeser in a statement. The ministry also noted that as the direct representative of Iran's supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, the Islamic Center of Hamburg disseminates the ideology of the Islamic Revolution in an aggressive and militant way and seeks to bring about such a revolution in the Federal Republic of Germany. Do you see that, guys? Did you see that? Seeks to bring about such a revolution in the Federal Republic of Germany. So when he says, and when I say that regardless of whether you want to go to war with them, these Islamists and jihadis are already at war with you. They have literally infiltrated your countries. They have built, mosques. They have built Islamic cultural centers. They have built Islamic schools, right? They hide behind freedom of religion. And they literally spread jihadi propaganda because they want to radicalize and indoctrinate people in order to eventually bring about an Islamic revolution. And that's what they were trying to do in Germany. And guys, I have to remind you, the Islamic Revolution in Iran did not happen overnight. It began in 1941. It was a 40-year process, guys, from 1941 to 1979. People just think it happened overnight. No, it happened slowly because the infiltration started small, worked its way up, and then eventually got to a point where it couldn't be ignored anymore. And by the time people started paying attention to it, it was too late. They'd already gained a lot of control and support and sympathy from people. So take the threat very seriously. The Islamic Republic has literally built these Islamic cultural centers and mosques around the world. And the reason you're seeing this increased level of radicalism and anti-Semitism and jihadi behavior in your countries is because of institutions like this one that are funded by the Islamic Republic occupying Iran, right? And they're trying to destabilize your societies. And, thankfully, Germany found out and they shut it down. So again, when he talks about these, cultural centers, that's what he's referring to. So let's go back and listen to that again, because that's important.
Doing work regionally. They try to go as far as they can to Latin America even, and many places, as you mentioned, in Europe. So everything to try to...
Let's go back a little bit.
Are in this country and are taking full advantage of it. You're not dealing with a dumb enemy.
What States, how embedded do you think Iran is already in American institutions where we need to be concerned and maybe even on alert?
Well, I think the footprint is becoming more and more vivid. They are committed to that. They know what the weaknesses are in this country and are taking full advantage of it. You're not dealing with a dumb enemy.
What are the weaknesses that you think they're taking advantage of?
I think the fact that it's a little bit of a naive thought that they will not try to influence through their lobbies, what happens. You brought it up yourself. It's not only that; there are many other things as well. But
many other things as well. The lobbies, many other things as well, like those Islamic cultural centers. Like the one that was shut down last year in Hamburg, Germany.
They're at work. They're not only doing work regionally. They try to go as far as they can to Latin America, even, and many places, as you mentioned, in Europe. So everything to try to have a role that influences maybe the wrong way in public opinion. Khamenei had multiple offices in Europe through which they fund so-called organization for this and that, but in reality, they're doing the regime's bidding in antagonizing foreign citizens, journalists.
Right? So he's referring to that cultural center, that Islamic cultural center in Germany that was shut down because it was literally spreading Islamic extremist ideology, and it was indoctrinating people because they wanted to eventually destabilize and take over Germany and turn Germany into a Sharia law country. That's what he's referring to. And that's just one example, guys. There are thousands of places like that around the world.
The Jewish community or what have you. And now, most recently, we can see they're also trying to use, of course, it's not just Iran. There's a lot of Qatari money into it as well. But there is a lot of effort going into that. They're not just relying on propaganda. They actually spend a lot of resources and time to bring up these kind of elements on foreign soil.
And the reason they are doing this is because they want to expand their political radical Islam to the entire world. I mean, that is the reason they're doing this.
It's not even for Iran. They don't care about Iran. They're using every resource that Iran has, not for the benefit of Iranians, but to, in fact, finally get that world dominance in terms of, in their minds, mind you, creating this sort of modern-day caliphate. That's the ultimate goal. And the final frontier for them to ultimately win is, of course, ultimately America, which was the first target from the beginning. Death to America was the first slogan coming out of the regime's mouth. It was not just a slogan. They actually mean it. They actually mean it because their ideology cannot survive together with America and what it stands for. It cannot.
Mm-hmm. They're in complete opposite ideology. Why are they so obsessed with Israel? I have a hard time reconciling the hatred that we're seeing from the Islamic regime towards Israel. And I tried to study up on it. I mean, Cyrus of Persia was very good to the Jews and actually recognized that Israel is the Jewish homeland. He sent them back there. Your father had a good relationship with Israel. The conflict between Iran and Israel seems to be somewhat of a new conflict. And I'm curious, why is Iran so obsessed with spending so many resources on destroying Israel?
Well, obviously, it's extremely based on this virulent ideology, which goes even beyond anti-Semitism. It's one way to say if we can defeat and destroy Israel as one of the most solid allies of America, that's another knockout punch to America as part of their tactics and strategy. And so Israel has been targeted from the very beginning. And what's interesting in the meantime, and again, this is something that I want to insist, especially for your audience and Americans who may not know that the regime from the very beginning tried to create that atmosphere of indoctrination of Iranian youth into being hating Jews or hating Israel or hating America. And, if you talk to people who at the time were kids in Iran, what they were taught in school, they had to stand there and chant all these slogans, which is obviously not what they believe. And we saw footages of Iranians in different universities or public areas where the American flag or the Israeli flag is actually printed on the ground, and the regime wants people to actually trample on it. And you can see people purposefully avoiding doing that, and that's a signal.
Yeah, guys, I have that video. So let me pull up that video because I played it yesterday, but let me pull it up for you again. So here's a prime example. So here's a prime example of the Islamic Republic, right? They're trying to get these school kids to chant death to Israel. Okay, and like this is an occupied Iran, right? So they're trying to get these Iranian school children to yell death to Israel, and they're waving the fake flag of, Palestine or whatever. And then what's interesting is that the Iranian school children respond with death to Palestine, right? So just listen to this. The teachers or whoever, the people with the Islamic Republic, are yelling Magbar Israel, and then the kids respond with Magbar Philistine. So, the Islamic Republic has tried to indoctrinate Iranians for 47 years, but it hasn't worked because Iranians and Jews have always been friends and allies. It's literally not in our culture that, irrational hatred for Israel and the Jewish people. That's something you see with like the Islamic jihadis, right? So that's something you see with the Islamic regime, but not with the Iranians themselves. It's not something that even fits within our identity or our history, right? Because when you study Iranian culture and history, Cyrus the Great freed the Jews from their Babylonian enslavement, took them back to the Promised Land, which was Israel, and helped them rebuild the Second Temple, and that was thousands of years before Islam was invented. So we have a shared history that goes well beyond the jihadi propaganda that the Islamists try to push out there. And so that's why, even though the Islamic Republic has tried to indoctrinate us Iranians for 47 years, and for those who were in the school system, they would have had to chant, death to America, death to Israel, whatever, but they never like believed it, right? It's just something like you basically had to do in order to prevent from being expelled or being beaten or something. The reason that these kids right now are actually trolling the teachers and fighting back is because this is a more recent video. This video is from, I think, the past year. No school child in Iran would have dared say something like this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So this is like a prime example of the failure of the Islamic Republic, not only to indoctrinate Iranians, but also a failure to maintain power. Like you can literally see the Islamic Republic's control over people is slowly crumbling, right? Because even these, I don't know, I think they're like grade 5 or 6 maybe. These boys are in grade 5 or 6, and they're openly defying the Islamic Republic. And then I want to show you the other video where he talks about the flag. It's this video right here. So when King Reza Pahlavi is referring to how the Islamic Republic paints giant flags of Israel and the United States on the ground because they want Iranians, to walk over them and chant, death to America, whatever. Iranians don't. They walk around it. This is actually an older video. I think this is from, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's somewhere between 2015 and 2018. Okay. So this is at one of the universities in Iran, and the Islamic Republic has painted giant flags of Israel and the United States on the walkway, on the pavement, so that Iranian students can walk over it, right? And again, like this behavior is very like that savage Islamic terrorist jihadi behavior, right? It's like the same behavior you see in the West, where like all those like, I don't know, Arab pro-Balis or whatever, like they're stomping on the flag of Israel, on the ground. It's just like a very low IQ behavior. But the Houthis do it too, right? The Houthis have like that weird music video where they're like dancing barefoot over the flag of Israel. So it's a very like low IQ, inbred Islamic jihadi type behavior. Pretty much only savages behave that way. And so the Islamic Republic tries to get Iranians to do it, and it's never worked. So just watch this video. Not only do the students avoid stepping on the flags of America and Israel, but when certain university students who support the Islamic Republic and are part of the Islamic Republic step on the flags to show off, the students start booing at them. Like, you know what's interesting? University students in the United States right now are way more anti-Semitic and indoctrinated and radicalized than Iranians. And that's wild, guys. That's wild because you would think that those who are living in a brutal Islamic dictatorship where there's constant indoctrination, you would think that the Iranians would be indoctrinated. No, the Iranians are the people who are awake. We are the ones who are well aware of what Islamic extremism and terrorism looks like because we've literally been dealing with it for 47 years. They haven't been able to indoctrinate us, but for some reason, they're able to indoctrinate, rainbow-haired they them pronoun people. It's wild to me.
Oh, کجا؟ Oh!
So they're booing at these people, and then they start chanting Bisharaf. Bisharaf means honorless. So they're basically calling these people dishonorable for stepping on the flag of America and Israel.
بیشرف 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 بیشرف
Just look at the difference in crowd size, right? There's a very, very tiny handful of people, maybe like, I don't know, maybe 10 people who support the Islamic Republic, and those 10 people are stepping on the flag of America and Israel. And yet there's like, I don't know, thousands of university students here who are surrounding them and cheering at them, jeering at them, right? Booing at them. So if you ever want to get a sense of how much support the Islamic Republic has, this is a good representation of that. This is an excellent representation of how much support the Islamic Republic has. It has very little support. Unfortunately, the reason the Islamic Republic remains in power is because the regular people are not armed. They don't have access to any weapons, whereas those small handful of students who are stepping on the flag and they're part of the Islamic Republic, they have access to military grade weapons and all that stuff. And again, the Islamic Republic created something called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in 1979, which is basically a second army tasked with the sole purpose of protecting the Ayatollahs and keeping them in power. And whenever the Iranians try to rise up, they're literally murdered in the streets by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So I hope this should give you a good idea of how much the Iranian people despise the Islamic Republic. And this isn't even a recent video, guys. This is from like maybe 2018, right? So this is from about 8 years ago. And I guarantee you, the vast majority of you have never seen this video, even though I posted it on my timeline. Other people have posted it, right? Because unfortunately, the Islamic Republic has more money, more funding. They're better at spreading propaganda and disinformation. And they don't want you guys to see the truth. They don't want you to know the truth about what's happening in occupied Iran. But again, Western university students could learn something from the Iranians, right? Because we Iranians, we are very, very good at identifying what is Islamic terrorist jihadi behavior because we've literally been fighting it and dealing with it for 47 years. Right? Like a small handful. There you go. So that's the video that King Reza Pahlavi is talking about in his statement here, right? Let me go back a little bit. So now when he talks about the chanting in the schools and when he talks about Iranians not stepping on the flag, that's the video he's referring to.
And, if you talk to people who at the time were kids in Iran, what they were taught in school, they had to stand there and chant all these slogans, which is obviously not what they believe. And we saw footages of Iranians in different universities or public areas where the American flag or the Israeli flag is actually printed on the ground, and the regime wants people to actually trample on it. And we can see people purposefully avoiding doing that. And that's a signal to you guys outside. Say, hey, the regime wants us to chant these slogans, but that's not what we believe. So that again shows that part of the entire dominance in a way of having one dominant ideology, antagonizing other religions. And I think the most obvious target for them is obviously Israel. So that perhaps to some extent explains that. But, I don't think we should spend too much time about what this regime is in terms of being evil. I think we should concentrate on what the Iranian people are in contrast to the regime. The exact opposite of what this regime is projecting. Iranians are peace-loving. Iranians have no quarrels with our neighbors. In fact, we believe that it is only out of cordial cooperations and relation that we can really thrive in the region. And that's on the basis of amicable relations based on mutual respect, completely different than what this regime is projecting. Iranians are tired of conflict. Iranians have been impoverished in the name of whatever this regime has been claiming. Today, the latest figures as in preparation or in anticipation of a potential conflict, the Iranian market has been on the crash side for the last week. As of today, it reached almost 70,000 2 months for $1, which means that our currency since the revolution has been devaluated 10,000 times what it was worth. And Iranians are not seeing the benefit of this policy of engaging, JCPOA with the promise of that money hasn't gone to the Iranian people. And Iranians soon realized that, none of this is benefiting us. So in that mindset, this is where we stand right now. And there is opportunities to make all of this change based on a complete shift of policy. So we're spending, I think, way too much time talking about the negativity of this regime and impact on the region, as opposed to spend more time on, where's the solution and what we can do about it? Because there is a solution for it. But I don't hear it being talked about as much, whether in American media or in government. And I think that's the part that we need to catch up to as far as where America stands in how to deal with this situation.
Now, I think what we'd want to understand is, do the young Iranians, which the majority of the population is under 35, do they have the appetite and the stomach to fight against the regime? Because we know there's going to be bloodshed. They know that too, and they're probably afraid. And so the question is, if the West does whatever it needs to do, and we can get into that a little bit more, what exactly, is effective. But if the West does everything that you envision that we should do in the West, do the Iranians themselves have the stomach to really fight? Or have they been despaired by what they saw happen with the other students in the Masha Amini and all of that? Are you hearing from them that they are willing to actually fight for the change?
Well, Marissa, they have. The whole point is that they have, with no support whatsoever. And despite the fact that they've been thrown under the bus more than once, and still they're out there fighting. They're still out there doing the fight as I speak to you. And the thing is that, of course, they have the stomach for it. It's not a question of whether or not they want that to happen. But when you have such a brave citizenry that despite all odds are still fighting there, can you not respond to their call for help, for support? Because you know what the address is. You know who it is that you're supposed to be supporting and empowering. And so that's very important. In every campaign that was based on a nonviolent change, there was a tacit support from the Western free world. I mean, I don't know where Nelson Mandela or, for that matter, Václav Havel or Lech Walesa would have ended without at some point having that element of support. And Iranians are already doing that. Mahsa and her peers, of course, were the victims of this regime. And it prompted an explosion of reaction. One thing that I can tell you is that over the years, the separation of every time there was some kind of a campaign or movement have been reduced drastically and are much more frequent and repeated all the time.
That's true.
Which means, in fact, that not only they haven't lost hope, but they're resilient in continuing the fight.
Yeah.
So that is one factor that you should consider. We simply need to equal the playing field for them so they have an actual chance for succeeding. And that's where the West has failed us so far, in not coming to realization that the solution does not lie in trying to yet again cut a deal with a regime that you cannot trust at the end of the day.
Do you
As
think
opposed to investing on people who think like you, want the same thing that you have for themselves, and are your natural allies.
So do you think that when the West applied sanctions on Iran and then did a deal with Iran, and in return for that, they were pouring concrete into their nuclear reactors, and when we kind of let go a little bit and allowed them to gain more money, were they tricking us? Were they continuing to build nuclear facilities? Were we duped at that point? What should we have done differently?
Well, the IAEA has many times put out reports of how they were stopped from inquiring further into what is really happening behind.
Guys, I mean, remember, the Islamic Republic was literally building nuclear facilities in underground bunkers, right? Of course they were lying. Everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. That's how the Islamists and jihadists operate, right? And it's just so frustrating that for the longest time, Western politicians have treated them as if they are rational, logical state actors instead of the savage, violent Islamic terrorists that they actually are.
The scene. So, there might be an appearance of things by the regime, but there's a lot of stuff that they do behind the scene that has yet to be actually verified. So there's been always that sort of opaque non-transparency, which leads to being not trustworthy at the end of the day what they do. Of course, they can manufacture a lot of sort of staging it or in appearances and what have you. But again, it's recognizing the nature of the regime. Because when you talk about the nuclear threat, I can use the analogy of it's not the weapon, but the finger on the trigger that you should be worried about. And in that sense, can this regime be trusted at all? Now, when you mentioned the issue of sanctions, again, I must say that
I love when people in the chat accuse me of the fact, they accuse me of getting paid by Israel. I'm doing this for free. So yeah, I'm not getting paid by Israel. I'm just, sharing videos with you guys. And if you want to pay me, you can. But I don't need to get paid by Israel to share information about Iran with you guys. So there you go. Thanks for being here, though. I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the haters in the chat right now on YouTube. Thank you for being here, and thank you for commenting, because you guys are actually helping boost the algorithm and take my live stream in front of more people, and you're actually helping me get more subscribers. So please continue commenting. I do appreciate that.
a lot of people have been asking, are sanctions effective? Is it worth it? I would say if you're still in the mindset that your strategy for imposing sanctions is to force them back to the negotiation table to change their behavior, you're wasting your time. If you're saying, can sanctions hurt the people? I think the Iranian people know that regardless of whether there are sanctions or not, they don't benefit as a result. But they might as well tighten the belt with the hope that pressure will actually finally put an end to the regime. That's the price they're willing to pay. So therefore, the sanctions should not be the ends, but a means to an end of bringing an actual regime change in Iran. And I'm using the regime change word on.
Guys, I want to be very clear. So one of the false narratives that the Islamic Republic uses, especially through its, pro-Islamic regime lobby groups like NIACS and, some reporters and whatever, is they claim that the sanctions hurt the Iranian people, and the reason that Iranian people are poor is because of the sanctions. That's because they are relying on the fact that the vast majority of people will not actually go and read about the sanctions and see what the sanctions are. the truth is that the sanctions don't actually impact the Iranian people. The reason that 70% of people in Iran live below the poverty line is because the Islamic Republic has stolen and continues to steal hundreds of billions of dollars of money that should be going to the Iranian people. Instead, they are putting it in their own pockets, and they're also using it to fund terrorism in the Middle East, right? Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, the Palestinians, whatever. But they're also using that stolen money to fund their, Islamic centers and whatever in various parts of the world. Remember, like that one in Germany that was shut down last year? They're using it to fund the indoctrination of the West. So the reason that Iranian people are poor is because of the Islamic Republic. It has nothing to do with the sanctions. And yet, because the sanctions hurt the Islamic Republic itself, because the sanctions actually weaken the Islamic Republic, and when the Islamic Republic is weak, that makes it easier for Iranians to try and overthrow them. Because sanctions are bad for the Islamic Republic, they will try to, they will promote this lie that sanctions hurt the Iranian people, when it's literally nothing farther from the truth. What hurts the Iranian people is the existence of the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is the main oppressor and murderer of the Iranian people. Nothing even comes close. And in fact, Iranian people themselves want the sanctions there, and they want strong sanctions, and they want more sanctions, because that weakens the Islamic Republic. So pay very careful and close attention to those people who make the claim that sanctions hurt the Iranian people. Ask them if they know what the sanctions are and how exactly it impacts the Iranian people. You'll be very surprised.
Purpose, because it's got a bad name because you poorly executed it in other places. Just because you didn't do it the right way in Iraq doesn't mean that it's the wrong concept that should be abandoned. It is a necessity. But it's the way you do it and how you go about it that makes the whole difference. In terms of policy, whether they were Democrats or Republicans in the White House, they didn't perform that well, even when 9/11 happened. Example, Afghanistan. Example, Iraq. But Iran is a completely different story in many ways. And that's why I'm telling you that there is a solution at the end of the day which simplifies the matter. It's just a matter of who you choose to support and who you stop trying to insist on changing their attitude or behavior. That ship has sailed, literally. But now we are facing prospect of escalation of conflict. That is something that won't disappear by itself. But at the end of the day, the escalation is as a result of the regime in Tehran, still. Whether Israel has to respond or the rest of the region has to respond or there's a tit for tat, it's not going to die away. It's not by saying, let's have a ceasefire.
So this is critical, guys. So any sort of escalation, okay, in the Middle East, it's because of the Islamic Republic. And yet you have all of these Islamists and jihadis and whatever who will just blame Israel because, they want to push that jihadi Islamofascist propaganda. The reality is that when the Islamic Republic took Iran hostage in 1979, they immediately declared war against Israel. And they have been engaged in a war with Israel since 1979, directly and indirectly, and through their proxies as well, and also, the information warfare as well, right? The Islamic Republic has wasted billions of dollars in this jihad against Israel. So anyone who says that Israel is the instigator knows nothing about the Middle East, or they're on the side of the Islamists, right? They're on the side of the jihadis.
They won't stop. They may retreat. And in fact, tactically, the regime has retreated several times for two reasons. Number one, they understand strength. Every time you showed strength vis-a-vis them, they backed off. Not because they changed their idea, but because they reckon, okay, let's just pull back.
They have a lot of patience.
But
sorry, someone said, called me a genocide supporter. Guys, there's no genocide. there's no genocide in Gaza. That's like fake jihadi propaganda. Go look up the definition of genocide. You know what? I'm actually going to add it here to my list of topics. I'm going to do a full episode on what exactly is genocide and why there was never a genocide in Gaza, because that's just like jihadi nonsense that makes no sense. And you know, it's just like the low IQ propaganda that the Islamists put out, right? Like genocide. They just like they repeat it so many times, hoping that eventually it'll stick. But I mean, guys, if you want to come to this channel and talk about genocide, if you want to talk about the Nigerian genocide, where Muslims are genociding Christians, we're going to talk about that tomorrow for sure. So you want to stick around for that, because that's the real genocide that's happening. And for some reason, the Islamists are denying it. Very interesting. But there's no genocide in Gaza. It's like the fakest thing ever. If Israel was in fact trying to genocide Gaza, they are terrible at it, because the population of Gaza has actually increased. So there you go. But you know what? Since a lot of you are triggered by the fact that I'm saying there's actually no genocide in Gaza, what I'll do is I'm going to add this to my list of topics. Is maybe next week or the week after, I will do an entire episode on why there is actually no genocide in Gaza. And I'm sure that's going to trigger a lot of the jihadis, but I mean, facts don't care about your feelings, right? All right, let's continue.
Yeah. In fact, if you look at the statistics of the number of executions in Iran from the time of the Obama administration and the Biden administration during the Trump administration, it was literally half the amount of people executed in Iran.
Oh, sorry, I have a comment here. So Major says these, okay, eyes chanting about the non-situation in Gaza are the wingnuts who think that Greta Thunberg is a genius. Oh, 100%. Like, these people are so low IQ that they actually believe Greta the grifter. And she's like, that's like the biggest grift ever. You're 100% right about that. So I mean, so when I do my episode about the fake genocide in Gaza, the purpose isn't going to be, you know, to educate the low IQ people, because, you know, you can't change them. They are who they are. But it's more for everyone else who's watching and is interested in learning what genocide, you know, the definition of genocide. And I'm also going to dig into a lot of the propaganda that has been put out there, and you know, the deliberate disinformation that the Islamists and jihadis have used, where they deliberately misquote sources in order to confuse people. So keep an eye out for that.
Between these two administrations. What does that tell you? That if you're not tough vis-a-vis them,
Yeah.
you know, they don't feel any pressure. And of course, they will become even more virulent. They will become even more, you know, again, I'm talking about the financial component of it.
Right.
Money that the regime should not have had if the oil sanctions were actually implemented, which they were not. So in excess of $150 billion, money in the hands and the pockets of a regime that used it not to feed hungry mouths in Iran, but in fact, support their proxies that may have in fact led to the October 7th attack against Israel.
What is your reaction to now the Iranians training with the Saudis and doing drills together? Seems very alarming.
I'm not sure if it's because of the Iranian initiative or the fact that as a means of frustration that no clear action emanates from the West, what are the Saudis supposed to do in the meantime? Try to de-escalate in some way. I don't think that Saudis actually think that they can come and see eye to eye with the regime, but they're responding to the immediate state of affairs. But I think, if anything, it's all tactical, but it doesn't change the nature of the challenge that we face. And I think still the problem is that this regime, especially now that its proxies have been amputated, it has now the only means and recourse to, instead of playing through the proxies, so they gain advantage without assuming direct responsibility, now they have to attack themselves directly, which explains perhaps why they actually decided to launch those missiles against Israel.
Despite all the terrifying news, I'm grateful to be sitting with you in a moment where you sound pretty optimistic, actually, because you feel like the citizens have an appetite to fight. You feel like you're at a moment where Israel has an appetite to defend itself, I guess. Maybe the United States is going to wake up and also help vis-a-vis sanctions or other concepts and ideas that you've outlined. And so let's go into the vision of optimism for Iran, the new Iran. What does that look like, and what role do you play in it?
Well, recently, before I answer this question, recently I sent a message addressed to our neighbors in the region, which was very well received. In the very same context of, imagine what a different Iran would mean to all of you in terms of our relationship with the Saudis, with the Israelis, and why it is that why everybody is feeling constantly under fear of what's this regime next move or what have you, how different it could be. That is part of the whole dynamics for that change. What is a different Iran? A different Iran, a secular, democratic Iran, is going to be a country that proved before the revolution that it could have cordial relations with our neighbors, which we did.
So guys, remember, prior to 1979, Iran was a constitutional monarchy, right? That's what a lot of people don't know. I've said this over and over, continue repeating it because it's so important. And, I appreciate all the new people coming in and joining. So I'm happy to repeat this. For those who've heard this before, I apologize. Iran was a constitutional monarchy prior to 1979. Just look up the 1906 Persian constitutional revolution. Okay, so we actually had parliaments. It was something called the Majlis in Farsi. So we had a Majlis. We had parliamentarians. We had prime ministers. We had prime ministers starting from 1906 all the way to 1979. And then, of course, the Islamic Republic took over. So anyone who says that, the Shah was a dictator, an authoritarian rule, they never have anything to back it up. Because when you actually ask them about the type of government and the system of government, they have no clue that it was a constitutional monarchy. And, there are multiple constitutional monarchies in the world right now that are democracies, right? There's Canada, UK, Norway, Sweden, Spain, like all these countries, right? But for some reason, the Islamists and jihadis, again, because all they do is lie. They lie, and they rely on the fact that you are not going to go and fact check this for yourself. So they'll just say that Iran was a dictatorship, right? And then they also spout that nonsense narrative that, oh, if you guys want a monarchy, that's not a democracy. Well, this is going to be part of my episode next week when I talk about what's happening right now and the plan for Iran. But I just want to make one thing very clear. Iran, after the Islamic Republic is overthrown, Iran will be a secular democracy. Now, whether or not it's going to be a constitutional monarchy or a republic, that's going to be determined at the ballot box through a national referendum. Okay. I know what I am supportive of. Like, I know how I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for constitutional monarchy. I have a feeling that the vast majority of Iranians will also vote for a constitutional monarchy. But again, that is a question that will be determined at the ballot box by Iranians in a national referendum after the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. But don't fall for the jihadi, propaganda, low IQ narrative that monarchy is not democracy. No, Canada is a constitutional democracy. There are different types of democracies, and constitutional monarchy is one of them. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
And it could be even better in the future, because now we are living in a world where, Iran was still part of a world where it was very bipolar. The West versus the Soviet Union. It was a very different, in a geopolitical way of looking at the situation. And the fact that oil was such a big factor, and the whole dynamics of, what the West had to do to make sure that it has access to that energy. And that has always been one of the factors in the Middle East. But now you're seeing changes in societies. You're talking about steps taken towards liberalization. What MBS is doing in Saudi Arabia in terms of advancing more and more liberalization in some form, which we've never seen that in recent history happen in the Arab world. This means that today's youth in Iran or in Abu Dhabi or in Riyadh or in any of the other countries are more in that mindset. And I think a lot of it has been the impact of understanding that, of course, countries have their own cultures and their own thing, but at the end, the common ask is the same. And social media, I think, has played a great role in that, bringing people closer to one another. And I think in terms of that, Israel.
So that's the other thing. So he pointed out how social media has played a very crucial role in, raising awareness and bringing people closer and all of that. That's why, first of all, that's one of the reasons that I'm very active on social media. And, I've started this channel to raise awareness about this stuff. I've been raising awareness about Iran on social media for a very long time. But the YouTube channel is relatively new. It's only been about, I've only really been active since the beginning of October. So October 1, I started my live streams, guys. I just want to share some analytics with you because this is crazy. So I started my daily live streams on October 1. It's now October 28. And since October 1, guys, I've had 3.3 million views. And I have, my subscribers have increased by 11,000. So prior to October 1, before my first live stream, I was at less than 2,000 subscribers. And in 1 month, I've already gained 11,000 subscribers. So I just wanted to thank all of you for supporting my channel, for being here in the live chat with me. For those of you who are watching afterwards, thank you for watching the stream and the replay. Thank you for subscribing and sharing the message. And we're going to continue to get the word out there. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of haters in the chat, because they don't want the message to get out. They don't want the truth to get out. But we're gonna forge on. And I appreciate all of your support, both on X and of course on YouTube as well. And thank you for supporting my YouTube channel.
Israelis know what the Iranian people feel about them, and likewise. And only in recent years, in recent months, have we seen a far more evident symbolic gestures vis-a-vis that. The kind of slogans that people chant in Iran, the kind of responses that we hear from the Israeli side. I myself, when I was in Israel about 1.5 years ago, when I was talking to actual average Israeli citizens completely spontaneously, how much affection they had for Iran and Iranians, and dreaming of the day that we will have finally, beyond this regime, this liberation that will bring us as people together. And the same sentiments probably exist also in the Arab world next door to us.
How did the Israelis receive you when you went there?
Extremely warmly. And of course, what's interesting is that from a historical perspective, I think I was the highest ranking Iranian ever to visit Israel.
Uh-huh.
Ever since the temple was helped be rebuilt by Cyrus the Great.
So true, so true. His trip to Israel was absolutely historic, and that trip actually paved the way for the unity that we see now. Because before, a lot of us were scared to speak out about it because of what the Islamic Republic had been saying about us Iranians, and they had convinced Israelis and Americans that we hate you guys, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. Like, as I've showed you with that video from 2018, right? 2018, Iranian students refused to walk on the flag of Israel, but the Islamic Republic just put that propaganda out there. But when His Royal Highness visited Israel about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that basically he basically paved the way to normalize for us Iranians to openly say that, yes, we like Israel, we support Israel, without feeling threatened. Well, at least those of us who are outside of the country, right? Because those people, those Iranians who are inside of the country, if they show any support for Israel, they're basically hanged for treason. But you've seen, I've shown before a lot of videos and messages and images of Iranians inside occupied Iran who are sending their love and support to Israel. And that's actually going to be one of my episodes next week, because this week, yesterday, I spoke about what Iranians think about the United States. Next week, I'm going to have a show where I show all of you what Iranians actually think about Israel, and it's not what you might expect. And so what the king did was absolutely historic. I actually had the honor of visiting Israel myself last year for the first anniversary of October 7. I was part of an Iranian delegation invited by the government of Israel actually to be there. So it was an honor to be there. Very solemn occasion, but also it was just such a fantastic, wonderful experience. And I don't want to say anything too early, but since you guys are watching on this live stream, and I appreciate you all, I am working on a second trip to Israel, so stay tuned because that's going to be incredibly exciting, and I simply cannot wait. All right, let's continue.
The Jews in Babylon were freed, and he helped rebuild their temple. So it was very significant from a historical standpoint, but it was really a message of we value all these principles of freedom of religion. I made it a point to go to the prayer wall in Jerusalem. I made it a point to visit the Haifa temple of the Baha'is. I made it a point to go to the Vatican. I made it a point to go and visit a Zoroastrian temple in Houston. The point is, this is what Iran was like. Multi-ethnic, multi-religious, a true melting pot, long before America even existed.
And it could be that again?
And it could be that again and more, not just for our sake, but for the sake of our region itself. And this is the future that I see, that we can utilize our combined resources, not to buy arms to fire bullets and missiles at each other, but spending on education, on welfare, on things that people need. Dealing with the crisis that we face, like the water crisis, for instance. I think one of the best experts in the field happen to be Israelis that have the technologies. I want to have Israel as partners to help us manage this and make use of their, knowledge, as opposed to be a regime that says they have to be wiped off from the face of the earth. I think most Iranians think like me, not like Khamenei. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. Who do you think should lead Iran into the future if the people actually win and get what they need and what they want and what they truly deserve? Is it someone like your grandfather who was really tough? Is it somebody like your father who was very much in the modern mindset? Is it a Cyrus type? What is it? Is it somebody who's from Iran? Is it somebody like you who's lived in the West for 40 years? What do you think the best leader for Iran should look like?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of describing what the next leader should look.
So I just want to contextualize this question. So this interview is from a year ago, okay? After this interview, there was a very, very strong push by Iranians, both inside and outside of Iran, for King Reza Pahlavi to become the leader of the official opposition. And so after that, I believe it was earlier this year, he actually came forward and said, at your call, I will be the leader during the transitional phase until we reach the referendum, and then people can determine what sort of secular democracy they want to have, whether it's a constitutional monarchy or a republic. So his answer right now, it's outdated, right? It's outdated because as of now, he is the leader and he is the one who is leading the Iranian national uprising. And I have a lot of updates about that, but I want to walk you guys through it step by step. So I just wanted to point that out. So he is right now the leader because we want him to be, and he has accepted that role and responsibility. So he's going to lead the transitional government once the Islamic Republic is overthrown. Amir, God bless Goldie for the most important work she does for Javid Shah. Thank you so much. Payande Iran Javid Shah. Appreciate that, Amir. Thank you for the support.
Like, but what it is that our country needs to make sure that we can finally establish a system that is durable, sustainable, to the best interest of the nation. And in my view, I think that for a country or a region who, in terms of the mentality, have always been more individual centric in terms of leadership, it is time that we become much more system centric, where the role of the individual, albeit in terms of having high impact, becomes less and less a necessity, because now you're relying on structure and institutions that you need to strengthen. That's my approach of how I perceive how Iran could be strengthened. So you don't have to depend and hold your breath between one leader and the other and how good of a job he may or not, or she may do or not. So in that mindset, I think that part of the next day is to demonstrate that we start moving towards not only addressing the immediate governance of the country with a process where you can have, unlike what happened in 1979 at the revolution, where people were really shooting bullets in the dark, not knowing exactly what it looks like, what is going to be the consequences of that change. I want to have a C-SPAN type debate, constitutional debate, where every citizen can monitor and understand exactly what is being proposed in terms of what final shape the regime in Iran should take, how the Constitution incorporates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in terms of making sure that we put a complete end to any form of discrimination, and it's based in the law and the law of the land. And also for people to...
And guys, so all of these things that he's talking about has come to pass. And there is a transitional booklet, which we're going to talk about next week. And I'm going to go over that for you, bit by bit, and I will walk you through it. But all of these things that he was speaking about last year have now come to pass. So, and that's the thing. This is why the Iranian people trust him, because for 47 years, he's had the same message. He's always been truthful. He's always stuck by his word, and he acts on what he says, right? He is the only people that Iranians trust, because after 47 years of dealing with a brutal totalitarian dictatorship that lies and cheats and steals and murders and God knows what, right? We as an Iranian nation do have difficulty trusting people because of what we've dealt with the Islamic Republic. However, the only person we do trust is Reza Pahlavi, King Reza Pahlavi, and that's because the entire Pahlavi dynasty, him, his father, and his grandfather, Reza Shah the Great, the founder of modern-day Iran, they have always stuck to their words, and their reputation is flawless. And all of the lies and taqiyya and nonsense that the jihadis have used to try and smear the Pahlavi family, and they continue to smear it, it hasn't worked. It hasn't stuck. And the only reason that the Islamists and the jihadis continue to attack and smear the Pahlavi dynasty and no one else is because they are so afraid of the Pahlavi dynasty. That's why they try to discredit them. That's why they spread lies about them. That's why, all the nonsense, right? All the nonsense, even all the lies leading up to the Islamic Revolution, it was all based on lies. But that doesn't fool us Iranians anymore. And that is why he is the leader of the Iranian national uprising and revolution, because he is the only one that we trust. No one else. No one else. And that is critical, right? So he literally has the trust of an entire nation to lead us from, a transition of a brutal Islamic dictatorship to a modern functioning secular democracy. And that type of democracy will be determined at the ballot box. But we only trust him and, of course, his team. We trust him and his team, of course, but no one else, right? So it's his team. And that, those are the only ones we trust. Major, Germany doesn't celebrate the Holocaust. Japan doesn't celebrate Pearl Harbor, but Hamas's cheerleaders celebrate October 7 every chance they get, work at 100%, 100%. And Major, one of my episodes, I think I had the episode on October 8 or October 9. I called it out, right? Like I pointed out, like, why are these savage jihadis celebrating October 7? It's disgusting, right? Like these people, they're not normal. Like they're savages. They're Islamists. They celebrate death and martyrdom, and these are the same people who murder Iranians, and they're the same ones who are occupying us, right? It's that same Islamofascist mentality. Like it's pure evil, guys. It's pure evil.
To have a chance to actually have a real choice between what is the final best model. So I think that as far as it relates to me and my role, I'm only focused on be able to be, because of the trust that they put in me and because of what I've been asked to intervene, to be able to lead this transition, to help with this process. So finally, Iranians say, you know what? Now we finally have decided in a completely free and fair system of elections, our future and its leadership. And I think that I'm much more interested to focus on citizens.
Sorry, so someone in the chat asked me what I think about Israel's genocide. I mean, I think when Hamas broke into Israel on October 7 and genocided 1,200 Israelis, I think that was horrific. I think it was also horrific when I saw like footage of Palestinian civilians joining them and murdering innocent people in Israel. I mean, that was a horrific genocide, and Israel has every right to defend itself. So yeah, go Israel.
Taking a responsibility for their choice, rather than having to rely on somebody else to make all the necessary choices, if that makes any sense for you. I'm not saying that leadership is not necessary. I simply think that by strengthening the institution, you have much better chance of succeeding in actually installing a true secular democratic system that should go beyond the role of one individual. That's what I'm trying to work with people to understand, that as much as it's important to have leaders to step in, and I'm not shying away from that part, but I think it is important to understand the vision that I propose, that we would not have solved long-term the problem if you are looking for just a momentarily change, but we need to make that systemic. I really believe that we should not make the role of individuals more important than the role of institutions. It's a process, but that's my ultimate goal in.
Do you have people in mind who you believe could help build those systems? I mean, this is, I guess, a typical CEO question that I have as somebody who's built an organization. If you come in and you say, okay, we're going to start new, there's going to be a new process, and we're going to build a new process. You need those great minds. You need those great facilitators and doers. Are these people that you are aware of? Do you have some thoughts about that? And do you see yourself as kind of the great organizer? Are you more of the figurehead because you give so much hope, and you're their blood and the legacy, or do you see yourself doing both, where you're both the blood, the legacy, and the figurehead, but you in your mind have some people who you can recommend for the citizens to listen to and rely on to build anew?
Yeah, it's pretty much what you just said. Look, for instance, I think that the most obvious thing is we're talking about liberty, we're talking about the human rights, we're talking about democracy. At the end of the day, it's motherhood and apple pie. But does that put food on the table? Mm-hmm. People want to understand the mechanics of change, how we have a plan for Iran's recovery, how it's going to include opportunities for them to finally gain employment, be able to, feed their family and prosper. But that has to be something well beyond writing a constitution and voting in free elections. It has to be the understanding of what it takes to rebuild that country. What kind of investment has to come in? What's the role of, let's say, entrepreneurs or specialists in their fields, companies, technologies, everything that had the dynamics of that ultimately will tell somebody who lives in Balochistan, totally impoverished, how can I find an opportunity to have a job? So one day maybe Elon Musk come and say, maybe I put a Tesla plant in that area. Mm-hmm. Why not? And, but it's connecting with the people so they understand how that change can actually happen. So I'm trying to identify key players, whether it's in the political field or in the private sector in terms of the economic aspects. I'm working and talking to and consulting with specialists, legal experts. For instance, we talk about truth and reconciliation and the legal process for that, or people who are already thinking of constitutional projects as a proposed, project to start debating on. Economic experts who are working on strategy. What's the first 100 days going to look like? How are we going to sustain ourselves? Because sanctions are not going to be lifted overnight, and we need some revenue to keep the country running while we are addressing, what it is that politically we want to do for the country. All of these things have their own department and components. So you identify, and once people understand the game plan and the roadmap, they'll find their lane in which they can best contribute. So I'm trying to bring that into the equation. That is multidimensional. And of course, we have two separate phases. The first phase in which we currently are is what we do between now until we finally bring this regime to its knees that it's not there anymore. Yeah. And then we kick into the period of transition, which of course has its own strategy and roadmap. And this is in constant consultation with our activists at home, people abroad, and the diaspora is beginning to become more and more interested because now they're beginning to see, but we have to be ready for the takeover. And that's how you engage people into this discourse and these discussions.
What role do you think the Iranians in the diaspora would play? Do you think they would be eager to invest, go home, get involved, help? Are they still feeling connected to Iran where they would be willing? Because many of them like you.
Many of us are. I mean, I certainly feel connected, which is why, spending time to raise awareness. And again, I'm so grateful that you're all here. And if you're enjoying this, make sure that you like and subscribe on YouTube. I have something else I want to say, but let's finish this interview and then I'll talk a little.
You have lived here in America or in Europe. Do you think they will pour back into the country?
I have not heard so far any member of the diaspora, whether here in America or in Europe, say that if Iran changes, I have no interest whatsoever to help it be reconstructed. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to relocate to Iran, but there's so much they can contribute. But they also know one thing, that so long as this regime is there, not much can happen. So they're really waiting to see what's going to happen, to see when they can start contributing back to our country's progress. But I'm telling you, I've never heard any Iranians, whether as an entrepreneur or somebody running a business, or to say, I once was in Iran, I migrated here, now I'm connected to this country, which is my host country, and I never think back and look back to my country of origin. I have seldom found that to ever happen. Which again shows that Iranians have that sense of, I guess, inherited sense of patriotism in some way. You may be now a citizen of America or Canada or France, but you're still, at the end of the day, that Iranianness in you that is there. They can't help it. I can't help it. It's in me.
May I ask you then somewhat of a controversial question, given that you've lived here in the United States for 40 years, and congratulations, I know your daughter is going to get married to an American. Do you identify more as an American or more as a Persian Iranian?
When I think of Iran, and I think that it's a country that we deserve better as a nation than what we have, I think it's three things that is important to them. First and foremost is freedom. Goes without saying. Second of all, they want to be accounted for and involved. So representation and participation. And perhaps the most important element is a sense of human dignity. It doesn't matter if you're Persian or American. I think we think it's important. It's part of this. And Iranians feel that they have lost all that they were, and they are dying to prove to the contrary of the perception that we are not that. And how could you possibly turn your back on that? I haven't. I've dedicated my entire life, not because there's something in it for me. That's not at all my ambition. But because I think, especially when I see the mahsas and the nikas, the way they're sacrificed, They deserve better. But I have acquired so much knowledge. I have tremendous amount of respect and admiration for the American people and what you have accomplished, albeit in 1/10 of Iranians' history in terms of duration. But what it is that is valuable in terms of understanding how you make citizens hold their leaders accountable. And you have the mechanics for it. You have a checks and balance system. You have the various institutions. And that's how you really build those institutions. This is a wealth of information that I, and not just me, more than 1 million Iranians who live in the United States have learned living in this country or other free democratic country. That's a wealth of information and knowledge and know-how that you can bring back to have that impact on the minds of Iranians who have always dreamed of the same liberties but never experienced it. We have. And that's the best antidote to that poisonous ideological brainwashing that the regime tried to do and has, of course, failed. Because people don't believe anymore all the lies that they were told at the very beginning. So it's very clear to them. So it's no longer a matter of hoping for it. I go beyond hope. I tell my fellow Iranians, you know what? I want you to move the needle from hope to belief. But it's not a matter of hoping for a better future, but starting to believe that, hell, we can actually do it. We have the means, we have the resources, we have the talent, we have the know-how, we have what it takes, the ingredients for change, but we need to have an opportunity to do it. And I think once we're there, then for the first time we say, you know what? I take responsibility for it as an Iranian citizen. I'm not going to blame it on the Americans or the Russians or anybody else, sort of a self-pity type mode that we have often seen. We stand up there, we own it, as you say it here, because we know that finally it's our free will and choice in complete element of, how people know that this time their vote counts and is accounted for. That's my vision of a future Iran.
Well, Your Highness, you truly touched my heart. I will be praying for your people and for you and for the women. I think about the women in Iran that deserve better, the young daughters and the moms, and the people in general. I love your people. I love your food. As I mentioned earlier, I love the kindness and the warmth, and I had a feeling that I'm going to end with a thank you, and so I opened with a thank you, and I'll end with a thank you. And God bless you, and God bless your people, and may we just see peace, because that's at the end of the day, I believe, what God wants. God wants all of his children to live in peace together, and so that we all prosper equally. And so bless you and thank you.
As my mother coined this phrase, light will triumph over darkness. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And Iran should be a beacon of light in the Middle East, as it deserves to be. For those who want to continue to understand what is happening in the region, because now we understand how it really does impact us even here at home. And we do know that there is Iranian propaganda on social media. What would you recommend for people like me who are really curious and want to stay tuned in to what's happening? Where can we get truth and information?
There are many verified and trusted, outlets that we can recommend. I will certainly do my part in providing you with that information. If they want to also follow my activities, I can share my website, which is rezapahlavi.org. And in it is listed all of my various platforms, Instagram, X, and others. And, what I'm posting every day there. So, that would be a way for them to maybe find out a little bit more about.
Yeah, well, I certainly will be following. If you're going to share some progress with us, I think will be very interesting.
Of course, we will do that.
Well, Crown Prince, Your Highness, it's been a great pleasure. Bless you. And thank you again for everything that you're doing for humanity.
Thank you so much. I'm only doing my duty as a concerned patriot, but also not just for Iran, but I think something that could be a game changer for our world that doesn't want to see this sinister aspect of conflict and chaos and, living in threat of the next terrorist attack and what have you. But a world we can finally say, we can have really genuine peace for all concerned.
Amen.
So there you go, guys. There was the interview that King Reza Pahlavi did with PragerU last year. And the reason that I shared that is because I wanted to give a little bit of sort of like I wanted to set the stage for what I'm going to talk about next week. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about Iran and following the news, this is his website. It's rezapahlavi.org. He has stuff in English here, and he also is on, so all of his platforms are there, right? So Instagram, X, Facebook, Telegram, and YouTube. He, tweets in Farsi and English, but, I definitely recommend you follow him on X because the translate feature on X is pretty good. Like I would say it's like 95% accurate generally. So you definitely want to follow him there. He also tweets in English as well. So what I'm going to do is next week, I'm going to give you guys some updates on where we are now about a year later, right? And what's going on with the Iranian revolution and the Iranian national uprising. There has been a lot of updates. I'm excited to go through all of that with you. Tomorrow, we're going to go back to the Nigerian genocide. Why are Muslims mass slaughtering Christians in Nigeria? I'm also going to talk about Sudan because we are just getting the news about Islamists mass murdering people in Sudan as well. So I'm going to look into that. We're going to talk about it. And I'm going to bring back Zari. He was with us last time, and you guys really enjoyed hearing from him and, hearing firsthand from a Nigerian about the Nigerian genocide, Muslims slaughtering Christians. So that's going to be happening tomorrow at 12 noon. Make sure that you like and subscribe. And guys, so again, later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to come back and I'm going to continue my documentary series. So for those of you who might not know, many have asked me to explain the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Many people want to know, what happened, how it happened, how we got there. And there is a lot of disinformation and misinformation out there. I would say probably everything that non-Iranians think they know about the Islamic Revolution is probably wrong. There are one or two people who seem to get it, but for the vast majority of people, it's not your own fault. It's because the Islamists and the communists have pushed their propaganda for so long that that's all you hear about. And so people started, at first I thought, maybe I'll make a documentary or something, but that's, way too much time and effort and money, and I don't know how to make a documentary. So what I decided to do instead is to watch publicly available documentaries about the 1979 Islamic Revolution and then, give a rating. And then at first I was just going to watch it on my own. Then I thought, I might as well live stream watching it, and then that way other Iranians can join me in the live chat on YouTube, and then they can provide their criticisms and critiques as well. So I did that on Monday night, and it was pretty successful. So I did it again last night. The amount of disinformation and misinformation out there is insane. So after each documentary, I critique it as we go along. And then after each documentary, I give it a rating out of 10. So the first documentary got a rating of 3 out of 10. Last night's documentary got a rating of 0 out of 10. Okay, so that kind of gives you a sense of the amount of disinformation that is out there. And, we Iranians, we actually never watch documentaries about the 1979 Islamic Revolution in English because it's just incredibly frustrating and it's all full of lies anyway. Like, we only watch these things in Farsi or pay attention to, Farsi historians because they actually, know the truth. But unfortunately, the communist and Islamist propaganda has taken over the English narrative. So tonight I'm going to be watching another documentary starting at 8, and we'll see how it goes. And for those of you who are interested, you're more than welcome to join, especially for the Iranians. Make sure that you come and join us on the YouTube channel, not on X, because the comments you type in X, people can't see. But if you join the live stream on YouTube, you can see it there. So thank you everyone for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Payanda Iran Javid Shah.